Hi guys, so Matt Hancock held a press conference where he responded to questions from the media about the new strain, about the pandemic in general, and he received a question from Laura from Sky News, and unfortunately he didn't answer the question, he ignored it. Now I want to show you the question and how Matt Hancock responded to it.
Laura Bundock from Sky.
Secretary of State, earlier today, the Prime Minister warned about complacency at this dangerous moment in the pandemic. And yet, nearly 3 weeks ago, he was allowing people to socialise indoors over Christmas. Was that complacent? And are we paying the price for that now?
Okay, so before Matt Hancock responds, I think it's very important for people to remember journalists ask questions and politicians should respond to those questions with answers. Not just respond about and talk about something different, talk about something else. But unfortunately, Matt Hancock and Boris Johnson, when they're asked questions about the pandemic or about anything in particular, they have their own set of answers that they pull out and say, okay, I'm going to talk about this. Even though the question was about X, I'm going to talk about Y. Now, let's just revise the question. So the question was, 3 weeks ago, people could mix socially indoors over the Christmas period, and are we seeing the consequences of that now?
Well, we're seeing that the new variant of the virus is incredibly transmissible. It's contagious, highly contagious.
Now, the problem with this, Matt, is that you knew about this before the Christmas period. I think it was on the 8th of December when officially the government said, look, we have this new variant. But why did you wait and ignore this problem and and tell people, well, you can mix indoors during the Christmas period? And now we're seeing the consequences of that. You can't say, well, look, there was this variant and now it's a disaster. You knew about that. The SAGE were telling you about that.
And the fact that it spread so easily from one person to the other means that we have this incredibly difficult few weeks ahead of us. Whilst we get the vaccination plan rolled out, as we were just discussing, and it's imperative that everybody not just follows the rules and not just sees the rules as a limit that should be stretched, but rather behaves as if they have the virus.
This is perfect messaging, but it's too late. This should have been said months ago. This should have been said during the first wave even. But instead you're trying to fight the fire at this stage when it has already engulfed the building. The messaging was problematic. Go to work, don't go to work. Use public transport, don't use public transport. You can't say to the people, you need to act responsibly now, when the messaging up until this stage was chaotic. The idea, you can mix with 3 households or 5 households or 2 households or your own household. This just created confusion. And unfortunately, Boris Johnson and Matt Hancock have not taken responsibility for that confusion. Eat out, don't eat out. All of this added to the confusion, and it created distrust between citizens and their government. And now the government is saying, look, you need to follow the rules. You must not go beyond the rules. Now, I'm laughing here because I'm just remembering Boris Johnson recently took a bicycle ride many kilometers away from number 10, probably breaking the rules somewhat. Should he be fired for that, or should he resign? No, I don't think so. But it's undermining public trust once again. We can go back to the first wave when we saw how Dominic Cummings deeply undermined trust. He didn't suffer any consequences for that. He wasn't fined. He wasn't fired. He eventually left, but that was for different reasons. You have to take responsibility. You can't have a situation where the government are saying to do something and then the government don't actually follow their own rules.
And limits the amount of social contact that everybody has. And I know that's difficult. Honestly, I really do. But it's so important for everybody. And so don't flex the rules. I've said before that a flex to the rules can be fatal. And what I mean by that is if people push the boundaries of these rules or don't take them seriously, then that can lead to more infections and that can lead to more deaths.
I agree 100%, but there has to be a balance here. There has to be the public have to do their bit and the government have to do their bit. The problem seems to be that the public, the vast majority of the public are doing their bit. They're following the rules, even though some of the rules are not, and this is not me talking, this is Sage talking, the rules are not sufficient enough, are not sufficiently strict enough to bring down the spread. I said this before, Boris Johnson, Matt Hancock, the government are trying to play some sort of game here where they're trying to fight the virus at one hand, but they're always looking over their shoulder at the likes of the new ERG or Sir Desmond Swayne or someone like that, afraid that they're going to, I don't know, cut the hose pipe. You know, they're trying to fight this fire and they're always afraid there's someone behind going to switch off the water supply. And they're not focusing on the fire, they're focusing sometimes on the idiots behind them. And this is undermining the efforts. And at the same time, they're saying, well, maybe I shouldn't use too much water because it might piss off Sir Desmond Swayne or Steve Baker. We could try and fight the fire correctly, but it might upset some lunatics within the party, and those lunatics are going to perhaps sabotage our efforts.
And
actually, not sabotage our efforts, sabotage me. Somebody else will come along and put out the fire, but I don't want to, be taken out of my position.
The vast majority of people are following the rules, but it's very, very important that everybody does. Steve?
Yes, and I think one thing that it's really easy sometimes to forget is that as the NHS gets under more pressure from increasing numbers of patients with COVID...
Okay, so I'm not criticising Stephen here because Stephen is not a politician. This was more a political question, not a scientific question. It was the responsibility of Matt Hancock to respond. But Matt Hancock did not respond correctly to this question. He ignored the question and started talking about something else.
COVID. It's not just those COVID patients where services come under pressure. It's patients who don't have COVID as well become affected because the ability of the NHS to provide its full range of services becomes more and more difficult. So when the public, when all of us comply with these measures and really pay attention to the detail of complying with them, then we're not just helping our NHS staff treat COVID patients, but we're helping our NHS staff ensure that they can treat patients with strokes, who have heart attacks, who are in traffic accidents. So it's really critical at this really serious moment that we all pull together to ensure not only we reduce deaths from COVID, but that we ensure that the NHS is to do what it's always done for all of us, which is to treat us and keep us safe at our time of need.
I agree 100%. But it has to be, as I said before, the government have to take their responsibility as well. The government have made mistakes. What does it take for Matt Hancock or Boris Johnson to come forward and say, I'm sorry, the messaging before was a disaster? Or even, he doesn't even have to use language like that, just to say, look, we're sorry we made some mistakes. Let's try and fix it together. But they don't do that. It's ingrained in every Tory that you never make a mistake, it's always someone else's fault. And until they overcome that, this is okay if you're talking about spending too much money on a bridge, or if you're talking about, corruption in regard to expenses. At the end of the day, nobody has died. This is much more serious. This is a case of life and death. You can't allow the government, the government can't be let off the hook here. They are the ones in the driving seat. The public, yes, have a role to play. But if the messaging is confused, the messaging is dangerous in the sense that it sends out the wrong message, and if you have one rule for the government, ministers and senior civil servants and advisors, and another rule for the public, then at the end of the day, it's going to make it much more difficult for the government to convince the public you need to follow these rules. The people must follow the rules. It's extremely important that they do. But I think it would help build trust if Boris Johnson, Matt Hancock and others within the Conservative government would take some responsibility for the mistakes they have made. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot. I want to say a big thank you to all of my patrons. You ensure that this channel continues to exist. I'm eternally grateful for all of your support. If you join Patreon, you will receive instant access to our Discord server, where we have both audio and video chats. You can chat with me and other patrons, where we discuss important and non-important issues. Becoming a patron per month costs about the same as a large coffee, so why not check it out?